So, Mr. Thank you very much for your time. Maybe we can just start by talking a little bit about your visit to Paris for the Paris Air Show. When you started out, what really were you looking at to achieve in this visit, and could you tell us about how it's gone about?
Now, technology is a process uh, which keeps getting upgraded. Paris Air Show, as far as the airspace sector is concerned, is one of the premier areas to visit and update yourself on the technology that has been upgraded. Even though there were a little less of the flying demonstrations, I think a lot more companies participated over here. My primary objective here was, of course, we have a chalet by the Hindustan Aeronautics Limited. I'm in charge of production, in a sense, in India, and to get the world to know what HAL or Hindustan Aeronautics has been up to over the past few years. That's why I primarily came.
Okay.
Then at the same time, we are a little short on some seekers for our missiles. We are short on some technology which would, in our BrahMos missiles, which though is a less than 300 kilometer range missile, it needs also constant upgradation. It's one of the best supersonic missiles that India produces as a joint venture with Russia and BDL, which is a public sector undertaking in India. So we were looking at SEGEM to supply us some technology which, even though it's less than 300 kilometers per missile, we still need this French government's permission clearance before the SEGEM can pass on the technology to us. So that SEGEM has agreed to supply to us, provided, of course, that the French government clears it. So when the French defense minister came to the Hindustan Aeronautics Chalet, I mentioned it to him, and he was very positive about the whole issue. And said, okay, further when we meet next, and that SEGEM has to apply to the defense ministry, and thereafter they could pass it on. So this is something that was required. This is one thing that I think we achieved. Also, you know, our the Airbus. Airbus has a large presence in India. They have a research wing also. They employ upwards of 300 scientists.
Yeah.
So they have now, well, at least committed, and I think they will also demonstrate that their commitment to India and to the Make in India program launched by the Prime Minister of India by this new government is there to stay. And they are in talks with various people, with the Tatas, with the others, joint venture enterprise within India, by themselves if necessary, if they think necessary. We are willing to consider that as well as a government. And I think it could be one of the international, multinational armament companies which could show or pioneer the way for other companies to follow India in a new way. Then, of course, with Boeing and some of these Israelis that they're very good in missile technology and UAVs, and we're already using some of them. So we need to keep on upgrading those things. So those are issues which one was able to recalibrate on after my visit here, and how much of a technological upgrade there has been over the past few years at a government level. Of course, you have officer level delegations, both from the armed forces as well as from the civil services, who have been interacting. But on a government-to-government basis, I think it's now begun to become one of the norms after the Prime Minister Modi came along and did a few government-to-government deals with the French government. So I think more interaction between governments is called for. India's so-called acquirement procedure, what's it called, the DPP.
Yes.
It's been a very slow kind of a thing. It takes years for some things to be sort of finalized, and sometimes we try and get technology sourced in India through a purchase, through offsets.
Yes.
And what happens is that sometimes the offset partner has sort of more or less got bored, or he's closed shop and he's lost interest, something. So all those offsets, around $4.7 billion worth of offsets, which should have upgraded the technological base of the country to produce higher quality of armaments, that has suffered. So that offset, which was to have accrued because of 25 odd deals, that is still in the nascent stage. It hasn't gone through. So we are telling people that we are not changing the offset policy.
Yeah.
We allow you to change partners if you wish to. You will decide on the partners. We will accept those partners, and we will leverage offsets henceforth in such a way that we will identify the technologies that we require, and then ask them to channelize their offsets in those technologies. The main aim being to be more focused, because we don't have, even though we are one of the largest countries importing armaments, we don't have deep pockets. But we have a very insecure geographical environment. So we have to make the money go further. So we have to be more focused on that. I think that's the thrust of my visit here.
In the Israel factor, we of course have developed very good relationship with them. So where do you see the future of Indo-Israeli relationship going? And again, can we look at greater tech transfer from Israelis to us? Were you able to discuss these elements with the?
Yes, I went and met the Israelis. Also, my production secretary, the defense production secretary, had had a word with some Israeli high-ranking officers, and he had mentioned that we require core technology to be transferred by you to us. Would you be willing to do it? And I sort of was there to follow up on that. And basically they are willing to do so, but they were willing to do it on a government-to-government basis. The core technology, they said, shouldn't be bandied about at lower levels. So we must strategize and put in place institution so that it doesn't get, it doesn't go out of, it doesn't become public. So those are the things that one will be talking, I think, in the near future. So Israel is one of the partners we're looking forward to strategize on this.
So I guess things will become clearer when the Prime Minister visits Israel.
I would think so. The mechanism of transferring the technology has to be worked out, but the willingness on their part to supply it to us on a government-to-government basis, I think, has been established.
Okay. You're in charge of production. How satisfied have you been with what we have achieved so far in India, and what needs to be fixed? Because clearly something needs to be fixed in that.
See, production, at least, let me start with the lowest rung of the production ladder, which is also the most mass-produced requirement of the Indian army, which is ammunition, arms, clothing, boots, hats, by the Indian Ordnance Factories Board. It has more or less been a government department. It didn't have to make profits. What was required by the forces was given to these people to make. Sometimes it was not good enough. Mostly it was not good enough. But there was no will to improve, and there was no will to procure, to make profit. Whatever expenses, good or bad or intermediate, was made by these ordnance factories were going to be, at the end of the day, made good by the government who provided the money. So now we are in the process of restructuring the Indian Factories Board. We are going to tell them which technology they should concentrate upon, which can be let out in the public domain, into private sector. Why waste time and government money on these things? And you should also consider exporting items. So you have to make yourself good enough to compete in the world market. So we are, we are on the board of our Ordnance Factories Board. We have about 25 director level fellows who are of secretary rank. If you understand what a secretary is. In India, in Indian,
very senior.
Is a senior officer, the senior bureaucrat you can get. Now, even the secretary level 25 fellows, if they want a decision on a particular thing, they have to go to a particular secretary in the Ministry of Defense. So it is somewhat, they thought, unfair, and I agree with them. Why should all this talent of 25 secretaries brains a board which has passed something? Why should it go for vetting and to a second level secretary officer through under secretaries, deputy secretaries, joint secretaries, additional secretaries, and then to the secretary? So it takes a long time. So we are restructuring that one. We weren't quite dissatisfied. So were the forces. Then of course we have some very good public sector undertakings. We have the public sector, and some of them are very nice, like the BDL. We have the Bharat Dynamics, it's called. We have the BEL, electronics. Some very, and then also we have Vidhani, which is working on composites, which is also very good. We have also much better known companies which are big because they have been asked to produce, like the shipping company, the shipping Mazagon docks, Goa ship projects, etc. And HAL, which is the biggest for the air show. I think those are the most thing. So HAL, but they have been more or less the nuts and bolts stuff. They just put a screwdriver to whatever technology is already being developed somewhere else. They just put them together and screw on, and it becomes an aeroplane. So I think they've been now tasked by this government to improve. They must become a system integrator, and they should be able to compete in the world market. They should do their own research. They should be able to continue from there onwards. I was, rather surprised to see that even Pakistan had made an entry this time. Of an aeroplane, which even though the Air Force tells me is not such a great fighter, it makes a lot of noise, that and the other, but I think that we need our domestic aircraft industry to put its act together, especially the ADA and the DRDO, and thereafter after development and the production agencies. So these are things that have been afflicting the Indian defense sector. Somehow or the other we have to address it. We are in the process of doing so.
Okay. But HAL will remain quite a challenging thing to solve, because...
Yes, HAL will remain a challenging thing. It's got a lot of orders, because it's the only more or less integrator, a so-called manufacturer that we have in India. But we are passing the plate around, and we are hoping that other people will pull in and chip in and make production and passing it to the private sector.
So what kind of interest have you seen in the defense investments for private sector to manufacture in India?
The private
because
sector,
since you liberalized the policy about a year ago, have you seen much FDI flow in?
I don't think very much FDI has flown in. Still in the nascent stage. People are still assessing and finding out, because when the Prime Minister made the announcement, it was like pulled out of the blue for everybody, whether it was foreigners, whether it was India itself, whether it was companies that were private or public. It was a bolt out of the blue for them, and then interest has been generated. And this 1 year, I think, has been spent trying to establish a roadmap for how to do it. So once you have established what you want to do, then you put in the cogs that will enable you to do so. So the second year, third year, fourth year, fifth year of this government, hopefully, will see results on the Make in India policy. And one of the major things that we need to address in this Make in India policy is to upgrade the level of skill that we have, whether private or public companies have it. We must upgrade it. You cannot absorb technology unless you have the know-how to absorb it. So we have to start at the lowest rung. then at the next one, and then at the next one. So Make in India is not an overnight wonder. It's not like Alice in Wonderland. You have to plan for it today, work on it for the next 5 years. Hopefully, by the end of the 5 years, the Prime Minister's dream, our country's hope, will come true.
Okay. Coming to your bilateral part of the component of the visit, you have some discussions lined up this evening. What are the main topics that you'll be raising with them?
Well, like I told you about the Surgeon thing, that the Defense Ministry, France should permit them if they want to give us some technologies on themselves, and we want to integrate that technology on the BrahMos, which is an Indo joint venture. Just giving it to us is not enough. The permission needs to be that it should be put on an Indo joint venture, Indo-Russian joint venture. This is what I think I will try and work out. Then, of course, I suppose we will discuss general other things, the Scorpion submarines that have been made here, the Mirage upgrades that have been undertaken. And I must say that the French side in that sense has been great, because when they say that we will upgrade this by so-and-so month and year above written, they follow through with it. And they have delivered the 2 Mirages so far on time. I think they will do so in the next also. So I think I might as well go around and to compliment him that you're keeping your word as compared to some of the other countries that India deals with.
And Rafale, where will it figure?
Rafale, I think the deal has been announced, but it is being stitched up by the bureaucrats and the officers designated by both the governments. They are in the process of talking to each other. I think last week only they had somebody from France visit India. It was an ongoing process. I think will help. We hope that it will come. The final stitching of the deal will go through and be able to sign it very soon.
But the devil is always in the detail, and one of the factors I think which blocked the deal so far was the price.
Well, price escalation, because for 3 years we weren't able to walk the road that we had chosen to walk upon. There was a logjam. The Prime Minister broke it. So on the one hand, critically needed planes for the Indian Air Force are now going to be available to us, and henceforth we are able to negotiate other deals if we want to, because a lot of the money has thereafter become available, become free. Otherwise, we were committed to this 126 aircraft, and very little was left in the kitty to scout around.
But so you expect the price negotiations to settle on very quickly?
Well, yes, I would think so. And the one part of the visiting the President of France and the Indian Prime Minister, what was also spoken was that the plane would be with armaments as given to the French Air Force, and one is hoping it will probably be less, cost us less.
I was there at the Prime Minister's conference, and he said on better terms.
On better terms.
Yeah, I hope.
I hope internationally declared joint press conferences are followed by the negotiating teams.
Okay. So the French minister told the press a couple of days ago that he's expecting a deal to be stitched up in 2-3 months' time. That's a realistic deadline for you?
Well, it's a reasonable time frame, I would think. We should be able to work it out on that.
Okay. Thank you very much, Minister. Thanks a lot.